The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
But right now, we're going to go to the phone line because I want to give my good friend Sharon Rondu as much time as possible. As I said earlier, she is the editor and the owner of thepostandemail.com, thepostandemail.com. Now, you can get there. Her website actually is thepostemail.com, thepostemail.com. That's how you get to it. But the name of her electronic newspaper is The Post and Email. And it concentrates on corruption in government and constitutional issues. And it's a marvelous paper. Tons and tons of subscribers and readers. The news outlet of Post and Email was founded in 2009 by a gentleman by the name of John Charlton, who envisioned a media company run by citizens without the attitudes that are pervasive in the mainstream media and the large media corporations today. Now, what I like about Sharon, not only is she a top-notch journalistic reporter and filled with integrity, but she does love the Lord, and I love that about her. And she also has a great degree, a background in music and in history and research and writing. She attended the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York for 2 years on a full scholarship, and later got a BA degree in history from Eastern Connecticut State University. She's a professional harpist with several area orchestras and a soloist for special events, and she has performed in orchestras with Tony Orlando and Don and Connie Francis. And Sharon, I've got to say, a couple of weeks ago, I knew you were a harpist, and so I went on YouTube just to see if you had uploaded any videos, and sure enough, there was Sharon Rondu playing the harp, and it was gorgeous. I've downloaded it to my computer. I'm going to burn it to CD and listen to it over and over.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for having me, Carl, and thank you for your warm welcome and all of your listeners, and I always enjoy speaking with you. And, yes, it's been great fun playing the harp most of my life, and it kind of works out well when you have another career, too, which is what I've always had. I've never done just the harp. I've always done that plus something else, and right now the something else is the Post and Email. Yes,
and you do a wonderful job. I mean, your writing is just tremendous, and the depth of your investigation and your research, and you always are careful to document your facts. I really enjoy reading your articles and your writing and the things that you and your staff gather. Now, let me tell you, folks, I've had Sharon come on today because she has, in the last several years, she has compiled quite a dossier of several in-depth journalistic investigative articles about, and I'll get her to give you the details, but about, how do I say this? Military officials in the United States who have been treated extremely unjustly and unfairly by our government, and particularly by this administration. Now, most of you know that I had former Lieutenant Colonel, and Dr. Terry Lakin on my show. It was either last week or the week before. I can't remember now. But I had him on for a good 30-minute segment. We've had others on. Had a caller to the show a couple of weeks ago who made some claims that he also was one of those and claimed to be one of Obama's very first political prisoners. But Sharon, you've done several exposés of men who have been the victim of government targeting and government focusing, and these men are military officials and military guys, some of them kind of in the hero category. Tell us about some of these. I mean, fill us in. Give us some details.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. The Post and Email, as you know, was started focusing on the Obama eligibility issue, and we're still very focused on that with all the breaking news that happens as soon as we can put it out there. But in tandem with that, what we found is that there seems to be, I won't say a pattern, that became evident later, but it seemed as though people standing up for the Constitution, standing up for local laws, local ordinances that are supposed to be followed, the traditions of trial by jury of one's peers, and a jury that's not biased, that hasn't been handpicked by judges or gotten in the back room door or whatever. This has been something that people have noticed is not happening in America today, that our rights have been eroded. And what we found out much later is that there actually was a named program called Operation Vigilant Eagle. Now, that is something I've reported on, others have reported on, and the Post and Email was not the first to report on it. Actually, the Wall Street Journal was. They knew about it back in April of 2009, and not much was made of it. But in between those two things, what we saw is that it appeared that white male veterans, military veterans, who were standing up for the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, were being unfairly targeted. I've covered in a very extensive way the case of Walter Francis Fitzpatrick. I just put out a big expose about his court-martial, and it has forgery, and it has intrigue and conspiracy and cover-up. There's that. Now, the same person, Commander Fitzpatrick, was very much demonized in his own community when he stood up and he said this grand jury cannot stand as it's been operating because the foreman's been there for 28 years. And it's the same foreman, and he's appointed over and over and over by the 2 or 3 judges that are there, and essentially does the judge's bidding.
Now, this is a military grand jury, right?
No, actually, he's a civilian now. He's been out of the military for some time, and I apologize for not making that clear, but it is a civilian grand jury. In fact, though, one of the things that Commander Fitzpatrick has made very crystal clear, I believe, is that the military system does not use grand juries, and therefore the whole system of discipline in the military is quite unfair and very unconstitutional. So the soldiers are going out and they're fighting for Americans' constitutional rights and freedoms, and yet they are not afforded the same freedoms while serving. And if you are unfortunate enough that an officer doesn't like you, and I'm not saying that this happens with all courts-martial, but in some of them it seems to be the case that the officer or an officer who doesn't like you can very easily manipulate and put into place a case against you that really doesn't exist.
Wow.
And therefore you can be very easily framed, and we absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt, just as sure as Mike Zullo is that birth certificate on the website, the White House, is a forgery, we know that the form, that it's a confession letter that was crafted with Commander Fitzpatrick's forged signature, and misspelled, by the way. It's misspelled. We know that is a forgery. And recently, Walt and I have been...
what is misspelled? His name?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Listen, Sharon, I'm going to have to stop you. We're right up against a break, but this is getting interesting. When we come back, I'm going to get you to continue and expound upon that. Okay?
Okay, certainly.
Okay, fantastic, folks. Our guest this afternoon, Sharon Rondo. She's the editor and owner of the Post and Email. The Post and Email. You can go there, thepostemail.com. Thepostemail.com.
Welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Sit down, buckle up, and hang on.
Yep. That's what you got to do when you're listening to Freedom Friday. You got to sit down, hang on, and buckle up for the ride. Freedom Friday, Carl Gallups. Sharon Rondo is my guest this afternoon. She's the editor and the owner of the Post and Email. That's thepostemail.com is how you get there. Thepostemail.com. Run all those words together. Thepostemail.com. It's an electronic newspaper concentrating on government corruption, constitutional issues, etc. Sharon, thank you for being with us. Listen, we were talking about the case of Commander Walter Fitzpatrick, and what we're talking about for those that are just joining us. Sharon has written quite a few investigative articles over the years about U.S. military officers who become the focus, the target, the subjects of the U.S. government, and particularly this administration. The unfair focus, unfair target. They're set up because they stand up for constitutional issues, and it's an amazing story. So she's going to go into that. But before we do, Sharon, we've got a caller on the line. His name is Chris Farrell. I understand that he writes, well, I know that he writes for P.P. Simmons' news and ministry site. And Chris, you've been following a lot of this, and you have a question for Sharon. So fire your question, Chris.
Certainly. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Chris.
Would it be advisable for Commander Walter Fitzpatrick's legal representation to file an amicus brief in that McInnes case, which Attorney Larry Klayman shall soon argue before the Alabama State Supreme Court and in front of Chief Justice Roy Moore, the famous Ten Commandments judge?
Okay. Thanks for your question, Chris. So do you have any idea if Commander Fitzpatrick has any intention on getting involved in an amicus brief, a friend of the court, in that Supreme Court case with Obama and his identity, Judge Roy Moore presiding? Do you know anything about that?
I have no idea. I actually had never thought about that. We've never discussed it. I don't know what place he might have in that, because that's an eligibility challenge.
Well, it is. That's what I was thinking as you were talking, that Supreme Court case case is an eligibility challenge, and I don't think Commander Fitzpatrick's case was it?
No. Actually, the way Commander Fitzpatrick's recent expose of corruption began was that on March 17, 2009, he filed a complaint of treason against Barack Hussein Obama. He did name him as a foreign-born domestic enemy, but among other things, he said fraud, deceit, that kind of thing, and he filed it not only with a U.S. District Court in D.C., but he also filed it with his local grand jury, and that's how it all started, that the local grand jury took a look at this, and they said, well, we don't want to deal with this, but then Commander Fitzpatrick was able to find out, but doing some research, that the grand jury was illegally constructed, that there was this foreman who had been there for 28 years. First we thought it was 20 years, and then it became evident it was 28 years, and possibly longer, and that he was basically serving at the behest of the judge and rendering the decisions that the judge wanted to see and hear.
Let me weigh in. That's very interesting. So, but apparently, though, from what you're saying, a portion of Commander Fitzpatrick's original case did have something to do with Obama's citizenship, in that he named him a foreign-born. What did you say?
Foreign-born domestic enemy. That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that might be an inroad as somebody with standing to file an amicus brief. I don't know. That's very interesting, Chris Farrell. Thank you for being. First of all, Chris, thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for calling, and thanks for posing that question. And Sharon, I don't know if you still have contact with Commander Fitzpatrick. I know you did for the longest. Maybe we can run that by him. But that's interesting. So where is his case standing at this point?
Well, right now he has an appeal pending with the state of Tennessee, and there's not a lot going on until that actually is heard. The state of Tennessee is a very, very corrupt state judicially, and it would take me hours to explain how all of this ties in, but with what Commander Fitzpatrick went through because of his court-martial, which absolutely was based on a false premise. He did not steal money. He didn't misappropriate it, and the court-martial was contrived, and we do have proof of that, and as I said, it's a very intriguing story. But having come through that process, knowing that he was wronged, and trying to get the Navy to admit that there was a forgery in his file, this forged signature, which is spelled at the end, Fitzpatrick, we all know how that's spelled, and that it ends in a K. Well, his name, the way it's forged, ends in a T. You can definitely see the T is crossed, and it's missing the generation number, the third, because he uses the third. So it's missing that, and he's been telling the Navy for 23 years that someone forged his signature to a false confession letter, and then it went in the file, and the Navy will not reopen this. They know. The commanders know, right up through the JAGs and everything. But anyway, having come through that, he saw what was going on in Tennessee, and he tried to right some of the wrongs, and in so doing, he was actually jailed himself several times, and then they accused him of various things. So there's something still pending in the state of Tennessee, although it's been fairly quiet. The biggest thing is he would like to get his good name and reputation back by having someone with courage in the Navy, in the chain of command, all the way up to the JAG officers, look at his file, and he can show them proof that this was a forgery.
Well, it's interesting. We emanate out of Navy area. We of course, we broadcast all over the United States, and we broadcast to 4 states on the Gulf Coast, but we emanate out of the Pensacola-Milton, Florida area, where Pensacola NAS, Whiting Field, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a lot of Navy officers that listen to this show. So your voice and your plea may not be falling on deaf ears, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's wonderful. That's right. I forgot you were in that part of Florida. That would be wonderful because it's very much proven. Walt's life has actually been threatened over this by an NCIS agent. He was visited by an NCIS agent. It was years ago, and he told him that he better shut his mouth and stop banging the pots and pans together, as Walt would say. And that's what they said to him, if he did not stop trying to expose this forgery and the malfeasance.
Well, Sharon, listen, we're up against the bottom of the hour and a hard break, but let me just say this. Thank you for your update on that. Would you please keep us us updated. Would you come back on the show, especially as things break in that case?
I absolutely will. There'll be a lot more to report in the coming weeks.
I know there will. Thank you so much. Sharon Rondu, the editor and owner of The Post and Email, thepostemail.com. Go check it out. You'll love what you see there. Thank you, Sharon. God bless you. Folks, you are listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallup.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.